Right. Hey guys, hey, it's me. Hey, it's Tech Turncoat. Wow, the same fucking intro for 30 fucking years. How's everybody doing tonight? I am doing good. I have been accumulating stories by going out and having a real life. But I think I might save that for next week while I have more stories and also less of a continuous subject going on in front of me. Honestly, sometimes it feels weird to want to talk about other things when I'm doing these visual novel streams, but I think it's adds a fun little color to it. But that's not what we're going to be doing. Well, like a little bit. Today, I started live tweeting me going through the Amphorius story in Star Rail, the 3 point whatevers, and I will admit, I was a little. I've been fairly late to the party for a while now. Obviously, that means I still haven't completed Amphorius, and that was a year in the making. But I only really started getting serious about going through the story. I said like 4 months ago. Even I think that's kind of generous for myself. When I started, like, okay, let's get serious. Let's buckle down and actually do the fucking story. I was still in 3.1, and everybody else was at 3.6 going into 7, really. So, a little late to the party. And more than that, 4 months later, after I was like, I should really buckle down and get to this. And consequently, when I started live tweeting it, I was at 3.3 at the kind of the beginning. I think when I stopped earlier today, I was at. I'm just looking at the names of the missions here. I know exactly where I was. Oh yeah. 3.3, really early 3.3. So I am. I got some work to do, especially if I want to get to the end of it by the time 4.0 comes out, and I do. But yeah. If anybody wants to go see that, that's still probably at the top of my Twitter, and I think I'll keep it pinned for a while if anybody wants to go see that. And then I'll change it as new ones come out. But that's there for whoever wants to go to it. Part of me. So the reason I was live tweeting instead of actually streaming it was streaming Amphorius would be fun, but at the same time, I don't think I would be able to, especially since I'm like right in the middle of one of the other stories. I feel like I would get a lot of people like, "What are you doing all the way back here? Why is?" And I was just like, "Listen, I am where I am, and also, it's gonna be fast. I promise you. I promise you, it's gonna be so much faster if you just leave me to live tweet it." I used to do it a lot for Final Fantasy XIV, but I'm taking a little bit of a hiatus in 14. Mostly because I'd finished the main story of Shadowbringers, and I'm like, yeah, that'll do me for a while. I haven't started post Shadowbringers yet, but I'm like, that was good. That was really good. That's enough of a preamble. I want to go see what's up with my friend. Oh God, YouTube is dropping again.
でも犬は良くないな、飛び丸。
Good thing. We had this conversation before. Sojurou headed straight for his job. I think it's this one. And his name is so weird. I spelled it differently twice. I spelled it twice differently doing announcements and stuff. And I still did not get it right. The school day over, Sojurou heads straight for his job. While the school had approved his jobs at the Chinese restaurant and fish market in the Misaki shopping district, there was other work he hadn't mentioned to them. And it wasn't because he knew that they would complain about him working too many, but rather because he knew of the illicit nature of one job in particular. Also, side note, while I'm working on it, while I'm still fresh in my mind, and I've mentioned it, and we're not deep in it yet, big shout out to Cypher's English VA. She is doing such a stellar, amazing, bang up fucking job with that character. It's so good. She is giving the kind of performance usually only and please know I say this with the most respect in my heart for all sorts of visual voice actors of all stripes. If you were a voice actor, you are living a dream of mine. Really, I could not have more respect for you. But Cypher's English voice actor is giving the kind of performance that I would only expect from a Japanese voice actor. And I'm sorry to say that, but like, it's just, there's something a little extra there. And I don't want to say it like that because it makes it sound like there's something lacking in everybody else. But like, man, it just hits different for me. Oh, tonight. Today his workplace was the pachinko parlor in front of Yashiroji Station. Sojurou changed out of his school uniform into a black faux tux, then began cleaning the storefront. Yashirogi was the jewel of Misaki City, a busy place with a vast assortment of commercial centers and shopping arcades. Where there were people en masse, there were products made en masse. A romantic might describe it as a place of joy. A realist would note the free enterprise. And a cynic would point out all the garbage. Local authorities had attempted to beautify Yashiroji, but there was one basic tenet of society they could not overcome. This establishment was the embodiment of that rule. Businesses such as this attracted the dregs of society, and as such, the front of the parlor had become cleaned several times a day. Sojurou stood outside of the winter cold, sweeping up used cigarette butts, picking up discarded flyers, and tossing empty cans into the trash. Something about it must have reminded him of a mountain life, because he cheerfully finished the job with ease. Don't look too close at it, man. It's gonna fucking fry your pleasure centers. After making sure the storefront was acceptably clean, he returned to the inside of the parlor where it was nice and warm. Blinding lights, deafening sounds, and the oppressive odor of tobacco assaulted him as he passed through the parlor on his way to the office.
店長、外回りの掃除終わりました。
Hey boss, finished cleaning outside.
はい、ご苦労様。それでいいかな。2階の40番台のお客さんの様子見てきてくれない？
Good job. I got something else for you. Could you go check on the customer on machine 40 on the second floor for me?
どうも懐に飲んでそうなんだよね。あのお姉さん。
Just a hunch, but I feel like she might be cheating. His boss was a good-natured man who used to work a desk job. The reason he employed someone like Sojurou, even though he was clearly a student, was not because he admired him for working his way through school. It was because all the other employees were scary and intimidating, and he wanted at least one employee who was not.
いいんですか？トイレの掃除まだですけど。
So I did hear something that I've noticed about the Japanese language while kind of half studying it. He mentioned the toilets, and this may just be how I heard it, but it sounded like he said toilet, toilet, like cutting off at the e, and it just reminds me of what they call TV. It was televis, or I know the most obvious example of what I'm talking about is like a computer, because they still call it a personal computer, but they don't say personal computer, they say Medicon. When I was listening to that and I clocked that, I was like, that is interesting. I don't think I would have known that if I didn't have the fucking thing right in front of me that was like, yeah, PC, Medicon, personal computer. I was like, oh, fascinating. So yeah, some of the loan words they just go like a little bit and they cut them off. Anyway.
いいのいいの。なんかね、カメラの死角にいるんでいまいち確証取れないの。
It's fine, it's fine. She's in the security camera's blind spot, so we have no way of confirming whether she's up to no good.
そうちゃん、今のところ的中率 100% でしょ。様子見てきてくれないかな。
I want you to go because you got a good sixth sense about these things. Check on her, will you? Hearing that, Sojurou put away his cleaning equipment and headed upstairs. It was a typically large-scale pachinko parlor with 2 floors. It prided itself on being a local establishment that was satisfied with taking the locals' money little by little without resorting to more exploitative means. But regardless of the parlor's intentions, its customers were not so scrupulous. Among them were casual players, professional gamblers, and cheaters, all looking to profit by exploiting whatever loopholes they could find. Of particular prevalence was a device developed in the mid-80s that could disrupt a machine's circuitry from the outside and make it much easier to get what was called a 777 jackpot. As much as the parlor wanted to deny these cheaters entry, it needed to present hard evidence of cheating or risk losing customers. Particularly in the service industry, innocent until proven guilty was not a rule taken lightly. As a result, they could only punish the customers they caught in the act. Such cheaters were known as Gotoshi, a slice of society which Sojurou knew nothing about. What he did know was that they were inconveniencing his employer and violating their rules. Gotoshi. He went upstairs. Radio and game machine sounds on the second floor were quieter than the cacophony downstairs. It's so that they can be heard from outside and everyone can be like, oh wow, that sounds like fun. There were 100 game machines on the ground floor and over 80 on the second. While there were some empty seats here and there, it was a solid evening turnout. The machine mentioned by his boss was at the center aisle. Sojurou nonchalantly leaned back against the wall and watched the customer hit the jackpot over and over again. Oh, I know her. The second he saw her, his gut told him that she was not cheating. He still wasn't sure what made someone a master swindler, but if it meant they were special, this woman certainly fit that description. It was almost as if he could feel the luck emanating from her. As the customers looked on, she silently turned the handle again and again. She appeared older than Sojurou. She wore a green, form-fitting one-piece dress. A pair of stockings covered her legs. Her slender legs were gracefully crossed, and her elegance suited a painting better than a casino. Her dark reddish hair was cut short in a bob, perfectly framing her stylish spectacles and crimson lips. Truth be told, something was off about this picturesque beauty ringing the jackpot over and over again. 4 boxes worth of pachinko balls sat on her feet, and her winning streak showed no sign of abating. She looked bored as her slender porcelain fingers lifted a long cigarette to her lips.
なんかどっかで。
Feels kind of like I've seen her somewhere. Just as that thought crossed his mind, her gaze turned towards the wall and Sojurou. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. He reflexively covered his mouth to keep from shrieking.
あの人、昨日の。
It's her. The woman from yesterday. Acting on pure instinct, Sojurou took off running. He headed straight downstairs, desperate not to be on the same floor as her. He would have run straight out the door before his obligations to his job.
店長、早退します。それと、2階の人は問題ないです。
Boss, I'm leaving early, and the person upstairs, fine, totally fine. Bye. He tried to keep his composure as he spoke, jamming the school uniform into a paper bag as he ran out of the parlor. Cloudy weather brought the shadow of night over Yashirogi as he ran the shopping arcade towards the station. He shot up the long staircase like an arrow, quickly pulled the train pass from his wallet, and passed through the ticket gate. The ticket gate was crowded with people standing around, walking and talking. The station attendant by the automatic ticket machine had an unpleasant look on his face. There was now a familiar, comforting hustle and bustle around him. Just another day in the city. Nothing like what he witnessed the night before. He could finally breathe again. The momentary rush of relief brought him to an abrupt stop. He nervously turned around. There was no way that dangerous individual could be behind him.
考えてみると。
Wait. Why would I even... He couldn't think of a good reason for why he'd fled so desperately. As far as he could remember, he hadn't even seen the threat's face long enough for him to form an opinion about her. Sojurou gave himself a good slap on the cheek to pull himself together and quickly made his way down to the platform. Unfortunately, the next train was 10 minutes away, and panicking would do him no favors, so he quietly found an empty seat and sat down. He took another deep breath. He was surrounded by people waiting for the train, just like he was. And no sign of anyone pursuing him. His head finally cleared up, and he assured himself that he was overthinking things. Though he was surprised at how heavy his shoulders felt.
疲れてるのは分かってる。自分の体のことだし。
I'm just tired. I'm sure of it. I know my own body best, after all. Sojurou sighed as his greater than expected fatigue. He had certainly struggled since coming down from the mountains, but in retrospect, it could have been worse. Physically, he was probably holding up fine. He was much less confident in his mental state. The city and the mountains could not have been more different. He had been slow to recognize the differences and adapt. Acclimation was simple enough. Humans are nothing if not adaptable. Yet without any effort, one would learn to adjust over time. Recognizing the challenges had been the hard part.
そりゃあ、とにかく難しいことだらけだし。
Actually, it's kind of all but difficult. Sojurou grumbled a complaint he'd never uttered before. To be honest, he was still afraid to wander around town. There were so many things city people took for granted that Sojurou had yet to grasp. It was little wonder that this never-ending chain of surprises would wear on him.
そっか。疲れてるのは体じゃないのか。
Okay. It's not my body that's tired.
だから、あんな幻を見る。
That would probably explain the hallucination. He muttered to himself, then shook his head. That which exists, exists. Such was the way of all things. Tobimaro had called it a hallucination, but Sojurou knew what he saw was real. The city was a magical kingdom compared to the mountains. If there was real magicians secretly living here, that should have been no surprise at all. Thought alone made his legs tremble. It took him a moment longer to realize they were quivering out of fear. He had feared the unnatural ever since he encountered a wild bear on the mountain path as a child. Try to get closer.
あれはこんなもんじゃなかったっけ
But this is nothing like that.
なりふり構わず泣き叫んだもんな、あの時は。
Ah, shit. I cried and screamed my head off back then. Sojurou smiled a little bit as he recalled his traumatic childhood memory. Anyone could have fainted at the sudden appearance of a growling beast that towered over 6 feet. The monster in the movie that Sojurou saw not 2 days ago was the equivalent of a cuddly stuffed animal when compared to the wild mountain creatures. He was reminded that he'd faced far worse before, and his ordeal now was something he could endure.
そうだよな。今の問題はとちらっと聞こえた最後のセリフか。捕まえて始末するっていうのはどうなんだ。
That's right. The problem now is, I heard that guy say at the end. What's catch and eliminate supposed to mean? At face value, the meaning was obvious. But the implications were simply too frightening to contemplate seriously. Maybe he misheard the words, or maybe the speaker had misspoke.
都会のルール。誰かがきっと罰しに来るか。
The city means someone will deal out punishment. Eventually. Even as he said it, the idea didn't quite feel real. It was hard to imagine that it applied to him. Sojurou breathed in and closed his eyes. His vision dimmed, putting the illuminated cityscape out of sight and out of mind. For now, he resolved to put last night's events behind him. When he opened his eyes, his breathing had calmed.
それでさ、
No wonder.
青崎を殴りつけようとして結局どうなったんだ、飛び丸。
What happened to Tobimaru when he tried to hit Ozaki? The question suddenly popped into Sojurou's head. He decided he would ask next time and stood up from his chair. Long streak of light blazed by, announcing the arrival of the next train. That's what that was. Oh. I guess I was that close. Gotta save over here. Yes. And next. Knights, it says. Although, knight's possessive. Let me tell you how the events of yesterday transpired. On moonless nights, you must never look back. Was it a lesson or a warning? It was so very long ago. At the time, I couldn't have imagined what I was, what my very being would become. One night it came without warning. I was filled with an anxiety so heightened, it made me want to burst into tears. So I fled to my grandfather's workshop. Okay, we're playing as Alco? Unlike the grandfather I knew, he smiled and kindly placed his hand upon my head. Yes, the Red Death follows your every step. Rather than consoling me, he sent me home with only those haunting words. That night I was certain I sensed a shadow lurking behind me. Something or someone watching me from afar. Then, little by little, year by year, it drew closer. Eventually, the presence that once felt like a spot on the horizon grew so close I could feel its breath down the base of my neck. Of course, it was all in my mind. When I turned around, nobody was there. But that night marked the beginning. In hindsight, I later understood that the indescribable anxiety I felt was the dread of certain death. I think that was all in English. Hold on. I don't need to read that then. How much time had passed since that night? It lingered deep in the recesses of my mind where childhood memories are kept. A faded, storybook-esque memory. On dark nights, I still hear the faint echo of my grandfather's words. But no matter how strong the wind may howl, or how entrancing the song of the girl next to me, I could never bury his ominous words completely. It's here. Oh, the girl beside me said. Alice's inflectionless voice spoke volumes of her role as the bystander. That night there was only me and her. It was the night it would mark as the birth of who I am today. For what should have been quite the memorable night, it sure wasn't a promising start. Dense clouds blocked the starlight above like a black umbrella. Strong wind tore through the sky, carrying the heavy clouds with it. The hands of the clock in the middle of the park pointed skyward, as if reaching for the moon. Unfortunately for them, tonight there was no moon to point at. The winter air grew fiercer as the night wore on, inhaling as though it would freeze me from the inside. I felt as though the air chilled me to the bone, threatening to pass up my spine directly to my brain, to prevent my mind from being paralyzed, and to prevent my fingertips from becoming stone. I sparked a fire using my internal rhythm and emotion.
触覚を譲るわ。幸運ね。あの位置なら刻んでおいたウィスプが止まる。
I'm transferring tactile feedback to you. Good luck. Stand over there, and the engraved will-o'-the-wisp will ignite. I respond to Alice with a nod. And then, for just a moment, I saw the ground. My legs quivered ever so faintly. I told myself they were shaking from the cold, but I wasn't so sure. In reality, they might not have been numbed by the cold, but by fear. I breathed a sigh of relief. My humanity must still be intact if my emotions are still present. Before I could sink into the pool of my own sentimentality, the sensations from the battlefield flowed from Alice into me. A transparent wall covered the entire park. An unrecognizable carpet rooted deep under the earth. Ooh. Alice Kunoji's chants of the Mother Goose's fairy tales permeated the night. The sensations became one with my body. I felt goosebumps on my quivering right arm. Someone had trespassed. Goosebumps crept up my right arm like ants, and slowly but surely made inroads from my heart. Holding back the desire to drive them out, I waited for them to reach a certain, definitive position. A moonless night. The park's quaint streetlights were not enough to lift the darkness. The ants came to a stop. Far, far from my right arm, they had reached my very heart. Even without the aid of my senses of sight, I could see the intruder lurking in the darkness. To starboard in the bushes about 30 steps back on all fours, it was beckoning with its right hand. There! The enemy's movements and my perception of it were in lockstep. I spun around. Jesus! The enemy's arm stretched out like a spear. This lethal weapon aimed at the back of my head brushed my hair at breakneck speed. With the omniscient awareness granted by Alice's ward, I managed to avoid it by the skin of my teeth. My hair fanned through the air from the violence of the attack. The strike grazed my cheek, and I felt a small, sharp pain. It felt like the kiss of death. I switched the flow of my body's blood to a different cycle. The blood running through my veins at a few feet per second transmuted into an imaginary element. My body became a single circuit, and my heart transformed into a completely different engine. It's going to be interesting to see how a real mage connects their circuits when all we've been in the head of Shiro for so long, who's not good at this and has very, like, bad circuits. Within me stirred an unknowable emotion of immeasurable heat. Something mystic, untapped by humankind, that made me who I am. It was the fire of life behind all miracles and fables. What we mages called magical energy. Connecting. I turned around, set the enemy in my sights, and held up one hand. My arm was the agent of my will. My lack of experience with my magecraft would only be possible with the use of vocalizations and gestures. Magical formulae were engraved all over the park. All I had to do was ignite them. I needed to direct the flow of energy and the magical energy within my body into each formula. Typically, a mage acts as a conduit. Whether wired or wireless, the mage simply pours magical energy into the formula. Releasing this energy in the form of projectiles, stream, or any number of other methods would usually suffice. But in my case, it was the feeling of my limbs whipping out. Burn! Oh, fuck. We're coming in for a crash landing. I fought speed with speed. Oh, fuck. Ah. You can do it. You can hang in there. Funny thing is, it's not even OBS doing this. I wonder if I paused it and trying to, like, yeah, hey. We're gonna see if we can turn some stats down here. Text controls, audio, really? Nothing? Shoot. Then you're gonna need to get a grip, my friends. Oh, there it goes. Okay. The enemy's arm, extended 10 feet forward, became engulfed in flames. It was a nighttime at the park, scene reminiscent of a campfire, or one in which the center of the flames contained a humanoid figure wriggling like a shadow puppet. The flames subsided just as naturally as it had ignited. No crackling, no burning smell. I guess that's what he saw.
結界返すわ死体を確認するから
You can have the bounded field back. I'll check the remains. After telling this to Alice, I headed towards the motionless figure. Killed it. I killed it. I killed it. Regardless of who my opponent was, I just took someone's life. My throat parched, I swallowed the truth without the sense of reality. I would have been helpless. So hard and bitter. Impossible to swallow. But I tried to anyway. I was unnervingly calm. My heart pounded and my breath felt heavy, but my mind was nonetheless calm. By the time I realized it, the charred remains were already in front of me. Bracing for a counterattack, I carefully examined the corpse. Everything seemed fine. The body was lying slumped to the ground, was nothing but ash. But something wasn't right. To begin with, its remains didn't smell organic. Not willing to believe my hunch, I took a closer look at the corpse's face. All that greeted me was the featureless white face of the mannequin. Damn it, they got us again! Screaming, I kicked the mannequin. The corpse crumbled to ash and disappeared with the wind. No, this was no corpse, just a puppet. And for all our efforts to lure the master out, we had once again been tricked by a familiar. My debut, my first test out in the open, will be postponed for another day.
いつになったら一人前にって。あれ
Will I ever pass this test? Huh? At that moment, I suddenly noticed something familiar in the corner of my eye. Something seemed strange about the slide at the end of the park. It appears as though its shadow were larger than it should be. Was I still drunk on the high of battle? It took me a second to realize. Who's there? Calling out was a mistake. Startled by my voice, the figure wearing a familiar high school uniform took a step back, then broke into a sprint. Like someone running for their life. Or should I say he was doing exactly that? After him! We've been spotted! In a rush, I shouted to my partner, but she hadn't even noticed the third party's presence in the first place. Though it wasn't as if I could move by myself. Embarrassingly, the fight had taken a lot more out of me than I would have liked. No, he'll get away! We need to catch and eliminate. Oh, yeah, there it is. We need to catch and eliminate him. There is no time for niceties. For us, being seen here was a matter of life and death. Wait, get back here, you! Shaking off the numbness in my legs, I made for the park's exit. I had to admire his escape. The witness party to the entire night's proceedings had disappeared into the darkness of the residential district without a trace. Why the hell didn't I sense him in the field? Complaining to myself when bringing back the figure in the uniform. Bitter at my own incompetence, I gave up the chase. Though temporary, the park had become Alice's woods. For anyone within a few feet of the park, other park-goers' identifiable features and voices became murky, like the stuff of fairy tales. Tonight's proceedings may have had a witness, but if our identities were still hidden, then this was still a chance. That looked like a male from behind. I returned to the park. That uniform was, without a doubt, from my high school. That clue was enough. If he was a schoolmate of mine, I had plenty of methods to flush him out. It's one thing after another. Amidst my grumbling, I set my priorities straight. Before some strange rumor spread, I needed to seal the witness's mouth shut. That was the highest priority. Quick and without mercy. Looking up, I saw Alice's previously distant figure. Though she was in as much trouble as I was, with her existence as a mage also exposed, she had but one thing to say. This means trouble. A statue-like figure staring into the darkness seemed more expressionless than calm. I was pissed. Her inscrutable voice resembled a moonless night. That so much made me angry. Oh, cool. Blues in her name. I guess that was the night. But that just leaves the question of, If it was Alco, Aozaki, why did he think it was that other pachinko girl? And while we ruminate on that question, as you should, I am gonna get a little bit more water because I'm running low. So, ooh, actually, you know what? Intermission time. Because it's so easy to do stuff like this. Do. Which one should we do? Let's do this one. I remember it being really good. All right. Forgot that I had that muted. I should find a way to. I know there's a way to do it in OBS. It's just hard and annoying, but I should find a way to make those transitions a little bit more smoothly. Yeah, whatever. Where is the mouse? There it is. Continue. Losing her name. Next. Losing her name. There isn't really any other way of saying this. I am a mage. Kind of like those witches in fairy tales who live alone in the woods and perform miracles in the wave of a finger. While the popular depiction of it differs from reality, it's closer to the truth than you know. Though, just so we're clear, no, I don't fly through the sky on a broom. That's a metaphor for uh, things I shouldn't be talking about. I cannot transform into animals nor speak to small birds. Modern mages are nothing so fanciful. Our existence sounds unbelievable, but we are quite grounded. Though it may seem like we can do anything, we're actually majorly constrained. And while I still have a lot to learn about it, this is my real job. Sounds a lot more romantic than being a high school student, right? Naturally, this is a secret I don't share with anyone. A mage must do everything in their power to conceal their work. That's the first and most important of the association's 10 laws. Not that I'm tempted to let the cat out of the bag at the least. My secret identity as an honor student is intact, and absolutely no good would come of me revealing my true nature. Hey, Reen. If anything, it'll lead to more headaches. That's why I do everything in my power to keep it a secret. Of course, if I'd accomplished anything as a magician by now, then maybe I'd see it differently. I fantasize about revealing my secret life's work to a single, special person when I finally make something of myself. Yeah, he's pretty stellar just to confess one day. By the way, I'm a magician. That idea alone is enough to keep me from spoiling the big reveal, regardless of the association's rules. My grandfather patted me on the head when I shared these thoughts with him. I don't know if it was praise or what, but I remember that his touch was gentle. I first learned that I would be succeeding my grandfather on the day I graduated middle school. When I returned home, there he was. Your elder sister left on a journey. From this day forth, you are the heir to the Aozaki, he said in such a matter-of-fact way. I knew that the Aozaki family passed down this old tradition of magecraft, but to be honest, I never imagined that I would be the one to wield it. Magecraft is supposed to be passed down to a single child. It was my sister's role to take the mantle, and I had no interest in dedicating myself to so many rules and routines. I planned to live a normal life. I had hopes and dreams for the future. I felt bad for my sister, but I was determined to live a life my own way. And while I managed to do just that for a time, I was blindsided by a vicious counterpunch. Since then, I've been thrust headlong into a world I've only observed from afar. It's a hell of a way to start high school. But I suppose it wasn't all that bad, all things considered. A lot has happened since then. I was so dazed by the newfound life that a year of school motored right by. I was a second year before I knew it. Thankfully, nothing drastic has happened. The 6 months my roommate and I totally tried to kill each other, notwithstanding. I'll do that. As it happens, I've got a natural talent with this magic stuff, so I've yet to have any real hang-ups there either. I'm only human, so I've had my fair share of headaches for sure, but never once did I worry about my future. I thought my life would be smooth sailing all the way. If everything had gone planned that night.
どう？
Well, Alice Konoji asked Aozaki the second time she entered the house. The second she entered the house. Her dark eyes succeeded where her voice failed to communicate the gravity of the situation. Aoko took off her unflattering coat, hung it on the hanger, and sat down on the sofa. Alice sat across from her, with a table separating them.
そっちは
Any progress of those things?
よくないわね。偵察に行けるのは7個ぐらい。ここのところ使ってばかりで作り置きをする余裕もなかったし。
Not at all. I've got 7 left that are any good for reconnaissance. I've been using them up fast and haven't had time to make more. Alice's gaze drifted from Algo to the box on the table.
あの夜町を監視していたやつはいないの？町の偵察は完璧なんでしょそいつら。
Were none of them keeping watch that night? They never let you down when it comes to this sort of thing, have they?
それは昼間の話よ。 夜間飛行は危険が多いわ。
During the day, no, but there is quite a risk when flying them at night. Meaning they were they were of the least use when needed the most. Alco sighed.
そういうあなたは朝は随分と強気だったけど。
Well, how are you faring? You seem pretty confident this morning.
ああ、こっちは予定通りよ。
Oh. Well, how are you faring? You seemed pretty confident this morning. Hmm? Yeah, I guess everything's good on my end.
明日までには絞り込めると思う。今朝、飛び丸にうちの生徒の自宅と行動時間を調べさせたから。
I'm pretty sure I'll know by tomorrow. I told Tobimaru to look into all the students' addresses and schedules. I feel like it's a major invasion of privacy, and you can't really do that as a student council president. Oh god, my mouth.
あの時間に公園をうろつくやつはめったにいないし、簡単に割り出せる。
Not many people wander the park at that time of night, so it should be easy enough to figure out who it was.
そう簡単に行くの？
And how can you be so sure?
行くわよ。伊達に生徒会に勤めてないわ。その程度のデータは揃えてある。
Because I didn't just join the student council to keep up appearances. I've been using my petition to keep tabs on everyone, gather data.
月一のバイト先はおろか、親しい友人宅との移動時間、その優先順位まで調べ上げてるんだから。
This feels like a major breach of whatever. I have info on everything from part-time jobs to friends' addresses and what they're up to in their spare time.
人には見せたくなかったリストだけど、そんな余裕ないでしょ。だから、そういうのが向いてる副会長にやらせたの。
It's a list I was hoping to keep a secret, but we can't afford to do that now, can we? That's why I keep the vice president around. It's the kind of thing he does best. Incidentally, the creation of the secret files started the moment Alco became student council president. The mere rumor of its existence is enough to strike fear into the entire student body.
そう。徹底しているわね。相変わらず。
As thorough as always, I see. Alice was only mildly surprised. It had been almost 2 years since they first started living together. She knew as well as anyone that when Alco put her mind to something, she saw it through to the end.
ま、私もあれがこんな風に役立つとは思ってもみなかったけど。ほんと、備えあれば憂いなしとはこのことね。
Well, I never imagined how to use it like this, but it's better be safe than sorry. But what happened last night was far beyond a mere exception to the rule. This predicament should not have been possible.
それより、原因は分かったの？結界の結びに不手際があったなんてのは聞かないわよ。
More importantly, have you figured out what went wrong? And don't tell me it had anything to do with your link to the bounded field. Alco glared at her. The ward was Alice's responsibility. If it was to blame for last night's trouble, Alice had to own up for her fair share. Alice and Alco may have been roommates and partners, but it was a relationship of convenience. While lineage had brought them together, they were more like enemies than allies. You know, mages. Ultimately, they were not a match. Where there was a blunder, it was punished. Where there was an opening, it would be attacked. If there was even an opportunity, the two of them would kill each other in the event of such a moment. Alice locked eyes with Alco. Alco's fierce gaze could make a grown man cower in fear, but Alice did not bat an eyelash.
仮の話だけど、あの結界に落ち度があったのなら、今まで何度もこういう状況になっていたでしょうね。
Assuming the bounded field was the problem, wouldn't this have happened countless times before? I suppose you're right, Alco agreed, as the question reaffirmed her trust in Alice.
結界のあり方は完璧だったのね。
So you're saying there was nothing wrong with it?
絶対とまでは断言はできないけど。
I honestly can't say for sure. Alice answered as flatly as ever. A bounded field is like a sanctuary sealed away from the real world. Steps are taken whereby a certain area is cut off from the outside world. There are all kinds of bounded fields. There are physical ones that close off an area behind a wall, and less tangible ones that use mirrors, mist, or trees to conceal that which occurs within. However, when closing off an area to the outside world, you cannot avoid communicating the abnormality's existence. In other words, the area may be closed off to the outside world, but it is impossible to hide the fact that it is, in fact, closed off. Think of Writer's Blood Fort Andromeda. That was very obvious. Would be detectable and impervious to interference from the outside. And that was exactly what Alice had generated in the park the night before.
その場所に用があっても今はないように思わせれば誰もそこには立ち入らない。
Even if someone has a reason to be in that place, they shouldn't enter if you've made them forget their reason for being there.
隠したい場所の周りに一時的な意識の改ざんを促す結界を張る。手間はかかるんだけど1時間程度の人よけには信頼性は高い結界よね。
It takes an immense amount of time and energy to create a field that produces a temporary illusion around a location you wish to conceal. But they prove extremely effective for at least an hour or so, right?
アリスの鏡を使った一級品だし途中で破れることもない。
Constellation's really good.
事実入ってきたのはあの人形だけだとはっきり感じられた。完璧じゃなかったら何が完璧なのよ。
And to top it off, it was top class, made from mere mirrors, and it's not like they were shattered while you were using it. The only other presence I felt inside was that of the puppet. If that isn't a perfectly constructed bound field, then what is?
私もわからない。森作りに落ち度はなかったわ。
I do not know. The trees were prepared perfectly.
森は数日かけて栽培したものだし、今まで通り信頼できる結界よ。けど例外があったのなら、どこかで見落としがあったのね。
I cultivated the trees and plants over several days, and it's always proved to be a reliable field. But maybe, just maybe, there was something I didn't account for. Though Alice's words conceded the possibility, her eyes expressed her confidence that they had overlooked nothing.
参った。こうなると一番いいのはあいつが人形使いだってパターンね。それならかろうじて納得できる。相手が魔術師なら結界の侵入ぐらいできるでしょうし。
Well, crap. In that case, we'd better hope that the witness was the puppeteer. Which would make sense. A mage would probably be able to penetrate it.
問題は侵入した時の違和感をどうやって消したかってことだけど。
That's a good point. Something else bothers me, though. How did he avoid detection? The thought of being targeted by this individual was pretty terrifying. If they were able to penetrate Alice's field, it could only mean that their skill in magecraft was superior to Alice's. Alice, in her current state, would be completely helpless against such a foe.
その線はないわ。
I've already determined that it was not a mage.
彼は部外者よ。ムクドリはともかく、ロビンが後をたどれなかったもの。魔力の気配は全くなし。誰かの魔術で操られている犠牲者というのもないわね。
It was most certainly an outsider. The starlings are one thing, but not even Robin was able to follow him. There were no traces of magical energy, so the rules had a magical pawn. Alko was quickly running out of straws to grasp at. And that meant she was out of questions to ask. All she could do was call it bad luck and leave it at that.
魔術師の秘密を見られておまけに目撃者を逃がしたか。普通の高校生の悩みじゃないな。
First you get found out you're a mage, then you let the witness get away. Why can't I just have normal high schooler problems? The sofa groaned as she leaned back. Her gaze went up to the brown ceiling with a sigh. It wasn't much of a view, so she was becoming increasingly
青
depressed.
子、覚悟を決めておいて。
Aoko, make up your mind. Her roommate's voice seemed indifferent, but Aoko just kept staring up at the wooden ceiling.
それとも、あなたにできないのなら、私が言ってあげてもいいけど。
If you're not up for the task, I can more than take care of it myself. The cool-mannered girl's statement carried an equally icy implication. Aoko took the words in slowly with as much sincerity as she could muster. It was like trying to swallow molten lead.
そうだ。覚悟なんてもう決めたでしょ。
She's right, and I've already made up my mind. The thought sounded hollow even as it popped into her head. This was clearly different from last time. What the fuck is that? While the aim was indeed the same, circumstances surrounding her target were clearly different. War Protocol Fortress? What the fuck? She may have been determined before, but that was as a mage. If enemies emerged, she would kill them. If she was challenged, she would step up to the fight. It was a fight between two mages, and her opponent was in the wrong. Even if this could only end in death for one of them, it was an outcome both parties could accept. Kill or be killed. Morality had no weight on this scale. But this time was different. Her opponent was neither enemy nor mage. Even if she had prepared to kill them, this person was likely not ready to die. That's why morality did factor into it now. Was she truly up to the task of murdering an innocent person? Did she swallow the fact that this was a common occurrence for a mage? She snorted sardonically. Being a mage did not mean Aoko was some kind of monk who could cut ties to the real world on a whim. There was one thing Aoko hated. It was doing things without conviction, or an understanding of exactly why she was doing them. When she acted, she preferred to act decisively.
うん。ま、やるしかないだろうね。
Well, guess I don't have any other choice. As she said it, she got up from the sofa, having her fill of the ceiling for one day. Aoko had returned to the alcove always, and Alice was done probing her.
じゃあ、これ。
Then take this. As if to reward her, Alice produced a small bottle. It fit neatly in the palm of her hand. The bottle looked completely out of place in her slender fingers. The glass was cloudy and it appeared empty. Some shreds of paper remained on the front where there once was a label.
何よそれ。
And what is this? Aoko stared at the bottle suspiciously.
収納の小瓶。ちょうど一つ余ってたからあげるわ。
It is a storage bottle. I had one to spare, and I'm giving it to you.
はい。
A what?
名前は忘れたけど、中国の小説に出てきたのと同じよ。
I forgot what it's called, but it's a thing out of one of those Chinese novels. Aoko was miraculously able to parse what Alice meant.
それってレンゲ堂の兄弟の話？じゃああの赤いひょうたんと同じなわけ？言いたくないけど、そこら辺の風邪薬のラベルを無理やり剥がして小瓶に見せかけてるそれが？
This is a good face too. Are you saying this is the red drinking gourd from that story about the two brothers who guarded the Lotus Cave? Don't take this the wrong way, but it looks like your everyday medicine bottle with the label ripped off. No, it's not that. It's... She's like, bottle. Alice looked at the bottle and acknowledged how ordinary it looked. She also understood that she would not be the one using it as she set it on the table.
赤いひょうたんじゃなくて陽子玉の常瓶の方。
But this is a jade flask, not a red drinking gourd.
そういう問題じゃない。私は魔術師としての雰囲気を論じてるんだ。
That's not the problem. The problem is maintaining my dignity as a mage.
些細なことを気にするのね。せいろがんの瓶じゃないだけいいと思うけど。
Don't get stuck on the details. Just be happy it's not a bottle of laxatives. Yeah, fine, whatever. She made a good point.
蓋を開けて相手の名前を尋ねればいいから。
Just open the lid and ask for the person's name.
ただし、相手に抵抗する意志が残っている場合、小瓶は割れるから気をつけて。
But be careful, because if the target is resistant, the bottle will shatter. Alko raised her eyebrows.
ちょっと待った。抵抗する意志があるとダメって、眠っている時にやれってこと？
Hang on, if he's resistant, that means I can only use it when he's asleep, right?
それは試したことがなかったわ。
I've never tried it, to be honest.
眠っているのに返事をする人っているの？
But like, is there anyone who responds to things in their
たま
sleep?
にいるけど。まあ、確かに珍しいわね、そういう人。
You'd be surprised, but true. People like that are rare. In that case, one would have to weaken them until they were about to pass
あ
out.
あ、そうそう。薬や魔術がかかっていると、その重さでも割れるから気をつけて。
Oh, I almost forgot. Strokes of magecraft will also cause the bottle to break.
使えない。それってほとんど役立たずってことじゃない。
And what good is it? What will break this damn thing?
それは青子次第ね。
The tool is only as good as the person using it. That is outright false, and you know it. Alice turned away as she replied. As the topic no longer mattered to her.
はあ、アリスがこういう小道具好きなのは知ってたけどね。これも趣味なわけ？
Alice, I know you're fond of using dainty tools like this. Is it a hobby of yours or something? Alko asked, hoping Alice would deny it.
多分。
Maybe.
それで、どうするの？持っていくのか行かないのか。
Do you want it or not? Without answering, Alko dithered a bit before taking the bottle and putting it in her pocket. She figured she might be able to find some use for it. Interesting. 2 hours had passed and the clock struck 9. Their conversation had moved from the drawing room to the sunroom, and manifested in the kind of scene one would not expect in such a mansion.
まあ本当はね、飛び丸に任せる気はなかったんだけど。
To be honest, I didn't really want to leave it to Tobimaru like this. A hot, earthenware pot sat on the table. Alko spat out complaints to no one in particular as she plucked food from it with her chopsticks. Tonight, they were eating a traditional Japanese meal that looked out of place in the mansion. When it came to the kind of Japanese hot pot where all one had to do was buy and boil ingredients, it was usually Alko's responsibility. Alice sat across from Alko and she silently poked at the pot with a fork.
山城のやつが来るなり、しずきくんはまだ部活に入っていないから面倒見てあげてくれないかな、なんて言ってくるもんだからさ。全校生徒の行動範囲なんて見直す気力なくなっちゃったのよ。
Yamashiro made it a point to say that Suzuki hadn't joined a club. It's not like I have the time and energy to keep track of every single student. The egg she had plucked was still as silky as a baby's bottom, so she returned it to the pot. She settled for the shirataki noodles instead.
そりゃ、あのバカがバイトで忙しいのは知ってるわよ。
I already know that idiot is constantly busy with his jobs.
だからできるだけ春先までのんびりしてて、あんなのでも親身になってくれそうな部の部長に当たってみたのに。
That's why I tried to set him up with a club activity captain that'd be accommodating.
ありがとうの一つもないってのは、ちょっと尺に触るわよね。
But the nerve of the guy. Not even a
聞
thanks.
いてるアリス。
Hey, are you even listening, Alice? As if her mouth was full, she simply nodded in response. Her expression stated that she had no interest nor opinion on the matter, but she at least appeared to be listening. Satisfied, Aoko nibbled on some Hanpin fish cake.
それに私、いい人なんて言われるやつは信用できないのよ。あろうことか、飛び丸までそんなこと口走る始末だし。あれはいい人なんじゃなくて、ただぼんやりしてるだけなんだっての。
I just can't trust anybody that says he's a great guy. Surprised even Tobamaro was gushing over him. The only thing he's great at is being an airhead.
だいたいあそこまで言われて怒りもしないなんてどうかしてるわ。
I mean, there's really something wrong with this braid if he didn't get angry after what I said. Her thoughts went to what happened at the student council room earlier that day. She remembered how non-responsive Sojurou had been at her words. His unconcerned face alone was enough for her to swallow the rest of her hanpun without chewing it.
何が分かってるんだなよ。
Thought you would understand, he says. His words were a lot like those that ended her childhood.
青子ちゃんは分かっているんだね。
You know it, don't you, Aoko?
それでも自分であり続けられるということはとても強いことなんだよ。
Through it all, you never lost sight of who you are. You're so strong. Perhaps it was meant as a compliment, but she took it as a patronizing way to pity her. Because the person who said it acted like she was looking at a wounded animal.
あんな変態の言ってたことなんて今さらどうでもいいけどさ。
Whatever. Who cares what that pervert thinks or says? That episode may have made her the most confused she had ever been in her life. Yet, what shocked young Aoko the most was the look of pity on her face of the person she admired the most.
喧嘩
You fought. Huh? The abrupt comment stopped her in its tracks.
ごめん、聞いてなかった。喧嘩ってあの喧嘩？
Sorry, what'd you say? Something about a fight? Alice nodded.
あなたの感想だけじゃ状況はよくつかめないけど
I can't say I completely understand what you said.
つまり青子はその人に喧嘩を売りたかったのね
But it does kind of sound like you were trying to pick a fight with him. Alice bit into the last hanpen. Her remark was unexpected, but completely on point.
なんでそうなるのよ。
What do you say that?
私はあんなのと1秒だって関わりたくないだけだってば。だいたいそれどころじゃないし、興味とか全くないし、会話もこれ以上ないってぐらい簡潔に切り上げたし。
I'd rather die than spend another second with him. I mean, seriously. Gross. I have no interest in him whatsoever. I'd love if I never had to say another thing about him ever again.
ならどうして今そんな話をするの
So wild to talk about him.
それはそのあんたに今日の調査過程を知らせてあげたのよ。それ以外何があるっていうの？
I was just reporting on today's investigation. Something wrong with that? What other reason could Alice be possibly suggesting Elko had for bringing it up? It would be several hours later in bed that Alko realized that she had dug her own grave.
いいけど私は別に
No, not really.
ただ青子は本当にその人が嫌いなの
But does he really bother you that much? Alice ate her hot pot in silence as if she was honoring some sort of sacred ritual. Her face was indifferent as always, but she was secretly enjoying how flustered Alco was. Alco remained oblivious to this. Normally she would have noticed immediately, but she was not quite herself at the moment.
本当にって、そりゃそうよ。気に食わないって何度も言ってるじゃない。
Does he really? Well, of course he does. I've said that often enough.
そう。具体的には
I like that they mentioned that Alice was eating with a fork and Alco was eating with her chopsticks. So that means whenever this is moving, it's it's Alice, and that's also characterizing when the fork was reaching for something in here and the chopsticks slapped it away. Okay, what specifically about him do you dislike?
は？具体的にはって、そんなのに理由なんて。
Huh? I don't need a specific reason to. She trailed off as she finally realized how disagreeable she was being. She could come up with no reason why. Her instincts had told her that she was incompatible with that hick. Hick! But why such a strong reaction? More than anything in the world, Alco hated emotions without reason, and decisions made with no rationale.
嫌いなものは嫌いなんだから、ちゃんとどっかに理由があるんだと思うけど。
I like how expressive they're being with just like. So obviously she doesn't have like a thing for. She's like holding her chopsticks and like putting it up against her chin back and forth. But what they can do is wiggle a chopstick PNG like right in front of her, like this face, and just like, yeah, that's. She's tapping the thing against her chin in thought, contemplation. I love playing with PNGs. It's so fun. I just don't like him. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, I think. She became more flustered the more she talked. Unfortunately for her, she could not come up with a coherent reason to hate Sojurou Suzuki. Not his fault that he had zero common sense. It was the fault of the environment he grew up in. In fact, it was admirable that he was trying so hard to adapt to civilized society. Clueless as he may seem, it was not a complete waste of space. If he seemed a bit slow, it was only because his gentle nature compelled him to think before acting. When one looked at everything objectively, the conclusion was obvious. As much as she was loath to admit it, he really was an unassuming do-gooder everyone had him pegged as.
ちょっと本気かっての。人間的に悪いところ、本当にみじんもないのか？あれ。
I can't believe what I'm thinking. Is there really nothing wrong with him? There was plenty, so she left that at that for now. The chopstick she had been using came to a stop. She was getting very annoyed. An irrational hatred burned through her head. Unable to come to terms with her feelings, she desperately tried to analyze Sojurou. But her mind only went in more circles. Alice fixed Alco with a deadpan stare.
呆れた。
Kagami shocked. A small sigh.
らしくないわね、青子。
This isn't like you, Alco. Those words were the final blow. Alco felt the floor fall out from under her. She was unable to leave her chair until long after Alice had finished eating and left. However, Even after getting knocked down, Aozaki was not one to be kept that way. She gets back up again. You're never going to keep her down. She made short work of cleaning up after dinner, and after conceding the first bath of the night to Alice, left the drawing room. Since it was customary in these sorts of mansions to turn the lights off when leaving an empty room, the only areas of the house were the drawing room and the two girls' bedrooms. The upstairs was enveloped in darkness. Alco briskly made her way to the deepest part of the east wing along a long corridor, limited only by the light of the moon, and arrived at her room.
結論として、
All being
やっ
said,
ぱり騙し討ちは気に食わない。
sneak attacks make me sick to my stomach. She had been considering this on the way down to the corridor, or perhaps ever since she had left the drawing room. The moment she had entered her room, she drew her proverbial line of the
やる
sand.
にしても隠れるのはなし。正面から堂々と向かい合って理由を言う。
If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it face to face. Give it to him straight. Like a man. This is not a concession driven by feelings of sympathy or compassion. For her, this is simply the way things ought to be.
よし。そうと決まれば。
Okay. That out of the way. After settling her resolve, she headed to the study next door.
木曜棚の当時欄、緑の背表紙とは。
Let's see. Thursday shelf, winter solstice, green spine. Without hesitation, she removed one book from the countless volumes on the shelf. The introductory textbooks transported here from the Yaozaki residence were separated into 6 shelves, labeled Monday to Saturday. Sundays were read off. It was the Lord's Day. Ayako had organized the books by topic, genre, and purpose, and had more or less memorized exactly what was in her personal library. Referencing any of this material took her no time at all. It was to be expected from the keeper of the study, though this keeper's fiefdom was nothing more than a small room. Both Alco and Alice had given up all hope in the cluttered mess of a library in the annex. Nevertheless, on occasion, Alco would have no option other than to give Alice a heads up and visit it when the study did not meet her needs.
できればそれは避けたいところだけど、と。
I really hope I don't have to go there now. Alco placed the thick green book down and took a seat. The desk she sat at was sturdy but uninviting. It wasn't the sort of furniture girls her age grew attached to, but she liked its minimalist elegance nonetheless. She flipped lightly through the book's old worn pages.
アリスみたいな結界は私にはまだ無理だ。
Still can't quite manage anything like Alice's battlefield.
人払いはその場所自体に頼らないといけないか。
Guess I'll just have to find a place off the beaten track. The mountains? The woods? The school building empty at night? She was looking for a place that would be, except for the worst of luck, void of people. Allowing her to forego the use of magecraft.
茨の壁だの魔力の霧だの。そういう回りくどいのもなんだしな。
Oh, she's
太陽
practicing it.
立つ
That's fun.
ってい
Okay.
うなら、もっとこう見た目にも状況的にも派手な方が効果的だし。
She's practicing making battlefields. That's fun. That's a fun little detail. Walls of thorns and magical mists are so indirect. If I want to cut off any road of escape, I need some place flashy and obvious, both in purpose and in looks. Muttering about how there had to be some basic spell that fit her needs, she continued to flip through the pages. It goes without saying that she was looking for a way to deal with the witness from the previous night. The witless witness. Ah, shit. Magecraft's uses were many, but not all-encompassing. Do these two. Nice how. Fundamentally, Magecraft was good for making things or phenomena that existed already, while more or less bypassing the time and resources conventional means would require. It was, however, unable to manifest phenomena that were impossible in this world, barring a few exceptions. It was essentially an equivalent exchange that used a variety of shortcuts. A phenomenon made possible by human hands, actualized by an individual's power. That was generally what Magecraft was. To give a simple example, if Falco were so inclined, she could make an entire lake appear at the mansion. However, it had to be something that existed within the world. Nothing, not even the smallest matter, could escape this unbreakable law. Unless you're kind of about that. Even so, even if Falco were to release a level of heat on par with an F-15 fighter jet's afterburner, that event would only be possible if a circuit named Aoko Awazaki acted as a temporary input variable in a magical formula. The derived equivalence was simply a value that had already occurred in reality. If the variable in question did not exist elsewhere in reality, the spell would not be valid. The imaginary element, known as magical energy, was like a lie that could only slip its fantasy through the network of order at the moment of ignition, giving form to the non-existent. Illusions invading reality was something the universe did not allow. Hated it. That's why they call it imaginary air. Still, was it? You can combine the imaginary factor, ether, pretty much everything else that's not real itself.
魔力だけで構成されたものは幻想扱いされて急速に消えていくとか。典型的な結界、茨の壁とかはもともと茨を生やしておいて魔力で一気に成長、強化してるものだし。
Anything composed entirely of magical energy is little more than illusion and will quickly dissipate. Even a typical field, like a wall of thorns, generally starts with the user planting the thorns before using magical energy to grow and strengthen them in an instant.
魔力っていうのは結局使い勝手のいいガソリン兼事象に火をつける火花ってわけで。
In the end, magical energy is just an easy-to-use fuel source, but acting as a firework that ignites the phenomenon.
なんて言いつつ、
Or it's so they say.
架空要素云々より基本的な回路の接続と魔力を加工して弾くことぐらいしかできないのよね、私。
Imaginary factors are all well and good, but all I can do is connect a basic circuit and process energy into projectiles. Laughing to herself, she looked for a bounded field or something similar more suited to her current ability. The identity of the witness was still unknown, but if they were a classmate of Alco's, she had any number of pretexts by which to lure them out. The problem was after that.
そうなると問題は命中率よね。一撃で決めないと逃げられちゃうだろうし。
Then it becomes a question of precision. If I don't take care of him in one blow, he might slip away. To be honest, she wasn't confident she could handle this smoothly without Alice's support. But Alco saw no reason to ask for help, given that the target in question was a regular bystander. Fledgling as she was, she still had a pride as a mage. She continued to turn through the pages rhythmically. In the midst of the fluttering sound of thumbing through the volume, Alco suddenly stopped at her finger at a certain page.
見つけた。
Found it! She smiled to herself. It was a simple formula that she had tucked away somewhere in the recesses of her memory. A spell of simple destruction.
檻をね、作ればいいのよ。
A cage. That's all I needed to make.
狩りをする時の常套手段じゃない。獲物を逃げられないようにするのは。
Oldest trick in the book any hunter worth their salt would use. She placed a bookmark in the book, closed it, and got up to return to her room. Suddenly, she felt eyes on her. Through the window, she saw her in the night, a girl staring back with a cold-hearted expression. The girl's face was hers, the expression undoubtedly her own. she began planning how to erase the witness. Though to say it was something as elaborate as a plan was overkill. This was just a job. She was going to make a cage and let her prey into it. There was no getting around it. Premeditated violence.
さ、そろそろアリスは上がったかな?
I wonder if Alice is done with her bath. She mumbled out loud as if the bath would return some warmth to her chilled heart. About 20 minutes had passed since she gave Alice the privilege of using the hot water first. Alice tended to bathe quickly, finishing well under 10 minutes. Her roommate was the type that could not understand the spirit of the bath, treating it as nothing more than a necessity for looking after one's body. For Alice, the concept of staying in a hot spring inn sounded more like a chore than anything. Though with this regard, Alice had to kind of agree.
よし、浴場はカラッと。
The reader disagrees, but is not in
ここ
the
に電
story.
気ついてる?
I guess it's my time to... Huh. Is the drawing room light on? It was unusual for Alice to sit in the drawing room after her bath. On nights when she had nothing to discuss, it was her style to return directly to her bedroom.
アリス、いるの?
Alice, you in here? I did notice that it mentioned that everyone turns the light off when they exit a room, but the drawing room's light was on, as well as the two girls' rooms. Oh, Alice wasn't here. Alice nodded. With notebook in hand, it appeared that Alice had been waiting for Alco.
そういうこと。私も信用ないな、ほんと。
So that's how it is. She really has no faith in me, does she? Alice scratched her head in exasperation. Alco, scratched her head in exasperation. Was it that Alice was worried about her, or had no faith in her? Her expression was so calm, Alco could hardly figure out what she was thinking.
方針なら決まったけど、聞く?
I got a plan. You want to hear it?
その顔を見れば聞かなくてもわかるわ。
I can tell what it is by the look on your face.
迷いがなくなったのはいいことだけど。悪い癖ね、青子。
It's good that you're no longer wavering, but you must do something about that tail of yours, Alco. Alice let out a small sigh. It was unusual for Alice to make such a display of her disappointment.
ええ、騙し討ちは趣味じゃないから。殺すにしても正々堂々、正面から理由を言った後にする。
I don't like sneaky attacks, so I'm going to do it fairly, and only after I've told him why straight to his face. Oh yeah? Is this going to be your special someone, Alco? Fuck. I hate that their names are both so similar to my mind. Alco and Alice.
それならすっぱり後腐れもないし、文句ある?
That way, there'll be absolutely no trouble later. Got a problem with that?
文句はないわ。そういうの、好きか嫌いかはこの際関係ないでしょうし。
Why would I? This is only really a matter of personal preference after all.
けど、
Gonna move back over here. However,
確実性はどうかってことでしょ? 私、いまいち命中率悪いし。その辺の問題は場所選びでフォローしようかなと。
you're worried that I'll mess up, right? My accuracy hasn't exactly been stellar lately, so I was thinking about how to cover my bases with location.
私はアリスのようにはいかないから、物理的に逃げられない場所にしようと思うんだけど、何かアイディアない?
I can't throw up a field like you, so I was thinking of doing it somewhere where he physically can't escape. Any ideas? Alice nodded in thought. The finger that gently rested on her lips indicated that the question was to her liking.
鏡はどう? 鏡の国なら永遠に閉じ込めていられるけど。
It's fucked up, girls. I'm gonna tell you right now, this is a little fucked up. What about mirrors? You could easily see them in the House of Mirrors for all eternity.
あんた、そういう ところ常識ないわよね。
Seriously? That's your idea? She frowned at Alice's bad taste. It was the kind of idea her roommate found to be inspired, but Alko knew was out of the question. Alko was looking for a natural bounded field she could prepare, not a realm bordering on true magic that she couldn't create to begin with.
なら他を当たるのね。でもここを使うのだけはやめてちょうだい。
Then you'll choose to do otherwise, I suppose. But please, whatever you do, do not bring him here.
言われなくても分かってるって。
I'm not an idiot. You don't need to tell me that.
あー、けどそうね。
But actually... Yeah.
ミラーハウスはいいアイディアかも。
A mirror house might actually work. Alko smirked and shifted her balance away from the wall she was resting on. I did want to check something. Hold on. There it is.
鏡はどう？鏡の国なら永遠に閉じ込めていられるけど。
Interesting. Here, she said a house of mirrors. And in Japanese, it was mirror house. But when Alice said it, it wasn't.
鏡はどう？
Kagami
鏡
was
の
like...
国なら永遠に閉じ込めていられるけど。
I think she may have literally said, like a house of mirrors. But it's been a while since I knew what house was.
サンキュー、アリス。全体の流れは出来上がったわ。
Thank you very much, Alice. I just figured out the whole plan.
ほんと、こういうのってダメ元でも相談してみるものよね。
I guess it is always best to talk to someone when you're in a bind. Now in a good mood, Alko retreated from the drawing room. Alice tried and failed to visualize what kind of blueprint Alko had drawn up in her mind. But whatever it was, it appeared to be the thorough kind Alko was good at. Alko headed for the bathroom, humming to herself as she went. A year and a half of sharing a living space had taught Alice something. When Alko Aozaki was in this good of a mood, only deep trouble could follow.
青子一人に任せていいのかですって。
You want to know if I'm okay with letting Alko handle this on her own? Robin, yeah. It was unclear how long the bird had been in the drawing room. Chirping at Alice, the robin-like bird pranced across the furniture as if it were its property.
そうね。彼女が一人でやると言ったのだから、任せるのが正しい信頼関係なんでしょうけど。
Yes, I suppose. She said she wanted to do it alone, and I do want her to know that she has my every faith. Still. The girl in black raised her arm. The bird, chirping once again, alighted on her outstretched, affectionate finger.
嫌な話だけど、
Suffice to say,
信頼と信用はまた違う話よね。
trust and faith are two very different things. Ah, she has our faith, but not our trust. The bird puffed out its stuffed chest in agreement. And Alko was none the wiser to her roommate's rather unsettling comments. Oh man, I was hoping I would be able to like cut it off at like a new chapter, but I don't think we're gonna be getting that. The following day was a typically overcast one. The day's classes ended as they had started, uneventfully. Winter breaks was just around the corner, and with it, final exams. Although Misaki High prided itself on discipline, it was still a private school which promoted a culture of independence among its students. Industrious students had a place to explore that side of themselves under the guardianship of student council president. More easygoing students could spend their time after school as they wished, as long as they were mindful of personal responsibility. The fact that the poster boy of independence was the student council vice president indicated just how vast the spectrum was. I almost want to do a Shinji voice for him, because he's kind of like a... I said it last time, he's kind of like a Shinji parallel. But, like, what if Shinji was actually cool? And nice? Naozaki, you in here? Tobimaru Tsukiji threw open the door into the satellite student council room, the rumored location for their secret meetings. Despite all appearances, he was the student council vice president, who also happened to be the poor soul responsible for executing the student council's dirty work. One person was waiting for him in the cramped room. The student council president, Aoko Ozaki, sat imperiously in a folding chair, glaring at Tobimaru in his boisterous entrance. Yeah, this room's freezing as usual. We really need to buy a heater. So as not to succumb to Aoko's oppressive silence, Tobimaru opened with some casual small talk. Thank you very much for coming. Let's get down to business. Do you know why I've asked you here? I got an idea. What's at the formality, Ozaki? Pretty cold to talk shop right away all the time, you know. Tobimaru closed the door and sat down across from Aoko. He was holding a blue envelope. Yes, at least sink ships. Might remember that once you get out into the real world. Yeah, I'll remember. Hold on. Yeah, nice try. Tobimaru was halfway to agreeing with Aoko before he caught himself and began to shake his head. As much as Tobimaru enjoyed the lack of red tape in his new line of work, he was not ready to turn full spy on his first day on the job. So then, are you done with your investigation? Yeah, I just finished the last interview right now. Details are in the file. Are in the envelope along with the file you gave me. I wish I could read kanji. There's not a single, kana on there. Damn. He tossed the envelope onto the table. Unless it's supposed to be unreadable, but even this looks like a thing, and so does this. I can see that. See that. I can see the way he did it. Good. Aoko picked it up and began to scan through the documents that were inside. She entered her own little world, not sparing the slightest bit of attention for Tobimaru. If ignoring other people were a skill, she would be a master of it. Yeah? Can I ask something? Yeah, what? The room was filled with a chilling silence. Aoko continued reading without an ounce of emotion on her face. Though Tobimaru kept an air of indifference, his stare remained fixed intently on her. You get some kind of kick out of doing this thing, Aozaki? Of course not. What's so fun on gathering intel? I hardly even get to use. Yeah, right. Just wanted to check. Whether or not he was convinced, Tobimaru stood up from his chair with a disappointed expression. You'll figure this out by reading it all, but I wasn't able to dig up anything conclusive.
というより、一昨日あの辺りにいた生徒はいないって話になりそうだ。まあ断定はできないけどな。
By all indications, there weren't any students in the area the day before yesterday. It's not like I can consider that for sure, though. No longer concerned over his task, Tobimaro headed towards the door. Oh, really? As if to say it was all out of his hands.
と、そうだ。
Oh, and more thing?
そういえば、一人だけ該当しなかったやつがいる。季節外れの転入生までは、青崎も調べきれなかったみてえじゃねえか。
There was one student that wasn't included in your dragnet. You forgot to include any out-of-term transfers. Alko raised her head ever so slightly. He was right. The recent transfer student was not included within the scope of her investigation.
そんなわけで、その字に関しては調べてないぜ。
So I haven't looked into Sonoji.
まあ、あいつならいつだろうと遅くまでバイトだろうが。いや、人殺しを見たなんてこと口走ってるようじゃ、家で悪い夢でも見てたのかもしれねえか。
And considering it's him, it's safe to assume he was working late. Or, wait. It would be if he hadn't mentioned something about seeing a murder or whatever. I told him it probably was just a bad dream. Tobimaro cheerfully left the student council room, not knowing he just tied the rope on the fucking noose. What? Simultaneously, Alko felt her fingers go numb, and the document she was holding spilled all over the table.
そんな、まさかね。
Can't be. That's not possible. She broke out into a cold sweat and tried to tell herself that there must be some kind of a mistake. However, the uncomfortable feeling in her gut would simply not go away. Perhaps because her intuition was almost always right at times like these.
バカらしい。
You gotta be kidding me. And yet, she knew what she had to do. She wouldn't have hesitated to kill Tobimaro if he had been the witness. What if it was who she was thinking of? Just considering the possibility caused her blood to run cold. Alko put her forehead in her hands and began to brood. And then suddenly... Let us talk choice. You will always be faced with choices. A virtuous fool and a wicked sage. You cannot save both. You must pick one. That is the freedom granted to you. 2 years earlier, Alko muttered the words offered by her grandfather the day she replaced her elder sister as a successor, and let out a sigh of lament.
すごくバカみたい。
This has to be a joke. She laughed at her own intuition. But it was no joke. If only those words had never been said. Alko locked up the student council room and left for the day. Calmly, as though nothing untoward had happened, she greeted the students as she passed them in the halls. She was almost shocked by how natural she seemed. There were still plenty of students at the school. The grounds were noisy with the chattering of students who had finished the day but yet to head home. Others still had club activities. The gray sky looked ready to pour, but nobody seemed to pay it any mind. Amidst the clamor, Alko had hastened to the school gate. She passed by some of the students in animated conversation. They seemed to be talking about their after-school plans. Apparently, they were adamant about maximizing their free time. She couldn't figure out how they could possibly be so irresponsibly focused on fun, but at the same time was in no mood to make fun of or feel envious of them. 2 short years prior, she had been just like them.
根は冷めてるのかな、私って。
I wonder if I'm becoming desensitized to it all. She retied her scarf, this time more tightly, to give off an air of solitude. But she was fooling no one. After all, what people who feign solitude are really masking is rejection.
そうよね。孤独っていうのはああいうのを言うもんでしょうし。
Solitude and rejection. They're 2 sides of the same coin. The area by the school gate was busier than usual. A group of boys appeared to be huddled behind it. Their transparent attempt to be discreet in terms of both location and loudness of voice did nothing to hide the fact that they were noisily arguing about a girl standing alone at the other side of the street. Oh, it's Alice. The girl was cloaked in a black cape. At first glance, it looks like it could have been mistaken for normal attire, but those from Misaki could tell that she wore the uniform of a prestigious girls' school. Said school had no connection to Misaki High in any way, shape, or form. The 2 girls were miles apart both physically and spiritually. A member of that school's student body was a rare sighting, as the majority were first to live in the school dorm. Ryan Girls' Academy had a reputation as a school for princesses, and it was rare indeed for one to be slumming it with the common folk. That alone would have been enough to cause the ruckus among the boys, but this girl looked the epitome of class. One could not help but describe the standing figure as charming. The way she silently, motionlessly, waited was reminiscent of a meticulously composed portrait. Oh, you have to do it again. Aoko took one look at her before instantly recalling that one word: solitude.
まったくうちの男子どもは家に帰りもせず陰でこそこそやってるのはそういうこと。
Whatever. Alright, lame brains. Did you have anywhere better to be? Disgusted, Aoko barged through the gate. At this point, she would normally head home, but today she crossed the street towards the waiting girl. Oh shit, is that the student council president? Damn it, she's trying to chase her away. Let the girl be. She has a right to stay there if she wants to. It's gonna go nuclear. The president versus the angel. What gives, man? Who cares if she's from the other school? She's not even on school property, right? Right, guys? Don't mess with Madame Alco. You're just asking to get smacked. The boys ran their mouths behind her back. Not in the mood to shut him up, Alco walked up to the girl and offered an informal wave.
どうしたのアリス。こんなところに来たって何も面白いことはないって言ったのに。
Something the matter, Alice? I told you before, there's nothing of interest for you here. For real? Alco heard the boys at the gate lose their collective minds and did her best to ignore them.
あのことを確かめに。
I wanted
青子、
I wanted to be sure, but Alco?
あの人たち邪魔なんだけど。
Those people are bothering me.
わかってる。今追っ払うから。
Yeah? I'll chase him off. In contrast to Alice's small voice, Alco spoke loud and clear. Naturally, this was on purpose so as to deal with the riffraff by the gate all at once. Oh shit, she's coming. Stop pushing me. Move it, I'm running.
いやでも あの子会長と知り合いなんでしょ？うまく会長に紹介してもらうとか。
Doesn't look like they're close. Maybe we can get the press to introduce us. You could not.
さすが一年坊主、まだ戦場の現実ってもんを理解していねえ。よし、死の間際までいい夢見ろよ。
Rookie mistake. You still haven't experienced the realities of the battlefield. On second thought, don't let your memes be dreams, kid. It's your funeral. Perhaps because too many of them had gathered in one place, the mob had entered a frenzied panic as they tried to escape. Alco addressed them all.
さーて、部活動があるわけでもなし、ただ家に帰るだけの帰宅部の皆さん、こんなところで何を集まってるのか教えてくれる？
Well, 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 what do we have here? If it isn't the Go Home Early Club. Would you mind telling me what you're all doing gathered in a place like this with no club activities to attend? Yeah. Student Council President stared daggers at the boys.
何しろ試験前だもの。
In any case, exams are coming up.
身になることなら私も教えてほしいけど、まさかガン首並べて女学院のお嬢様を眺めてただけなんてことはないわよね。
It sure would be horrible if instead of going home to study, you were loitering around just to ogle at some princess from another school. Now, wouldn't it?
声をかける勇気もなくて眺めてただけなんてことは。
Not even like a single one of you had the guts to go up to her and say anything. Not one of them was brave enough to admit that she hit the nail on the head. If any of them had any such courage, they would have already been chatting up the young lady.
いや、僕教室にちょっと忘れ物が。
Yeah, I think I forgot something in the classroom.
こんなオチならダメ元で玉砕しとくんだった。
If I had known it was gonna end like this, I'd at least shot my shot. Ugh.
天文部に行って双眼鏡借りるのどうだ？屋上からお顔を賜るとか。
What if we go borrow binoculars from the astronomy club? Sure, we can get a good view from the roof.
天文部にそんなのねえよ。あるとしたら野鳥同好会じゃね？
Yo, the astronomy club ain't got no binoculars, stupid. If anyone does, it'd be the Wild Birdie Society.
それ先月会長が潰したじゃん。鳥めでてる暇があるなら彼女作れって。
The president destroyed those last month. You have time for bird watching, you have time enough to find a girlfriend, idiot.
ああ、彼女作れですか。すみませんす。今日は裏口から帰るっす。ザキさん。
Find a girlfriend. Sorry, Saki. You gotta cut out through the back exits.
くそ、じゃあな会長、また明日。
Got a jet too. Let it press. See you tomorrow. And with those oh so charming remarks, the boys scattered with their tails between their legs.
楽しそうね、青子。
You seem to be enjoying yourself, Alco.
わかる？
You can tell. Alco's response slipped out all too easily. In truth, there were not many bad apples at Misaki High, and dealing with them wasn't really that bad.
で、
So,
ここまで出向くってことは何かわかったの？
what brings you down here? Did you find something out?
結界に残っていた気配の識別は、あとはここで確かめればいいだけよ。
I've identified the traces of the witness from the field. All I need to do now is put a name to them.
そう。ん？アリス、いつからここに？
I see. Alice, how long have you been waiting here?
下校時刻から。
Since school was dismissed. So she'd been here for roughly an hour. Standing in the same place for an hour to be taxing for someone as sensitive to the cold as she is.
悪いわね、無理させて。
I'm sorry. If you would have told me...
別に好きでやってることだから。
Don't be. I'm just doing it because I wanted to. As she spoke, her black eyes were fixed upon the gate and the students passing through it. She had likely been observing the gate in this manner for the past
私を
hour.
待ってたわけじゃないんでしょ？ 今からでも付き合うわ。
You weren't waiting for me, were you? Well, I'm here right now anyway, so we can go. Alice nodded in assent. If Alice was still here, it meant she had not found the witness yet. If she had found the student, Alice would have already gone home ahead of Alco and begun to research the student's background.
私の方はダメだった。
Nothing came up on my end. She reported the results of Tobimara's investigation. Alice remained silent. With that conversation over, leaving the two to silently endure the freezing wind. The silent stakeout dragged on endlessly. Students continued to pass the gate, each shocked at the sight of the unusual combo, and headed home. After 20 minutes, Alka let a sigh escape her mouth. Perhaps from boredom, perhaps from the cold, or perhaps both.
ねえ、アリス。帰り黎明に寄ってかない？
Hey, on our way home, do you want to drop by Dawn? Alco quickly turned to Alice to catch her reaction. Dawn was the name of one of Alco's favorite coffee shops. Offering no clear indication as to whether she was critical of Alco's blasé attitude or agreeing to her whims, Alice's gaze shifted ever so slightly. Alco followed her stare.
あれ、青崎も待ち合わせか？
Oh, hey, Azaki. You mean someone here too? The sudden voice took her off guard. There was only one person who spoke with this gentle, good-natured tone.
そう。やっぱそうなるわけか。
Of course it'd be him. Turning her back to Alice, Alco moved her focus to the newly appeared student.
それで、今日は何の用？
Can I help you with something? All politeness flew out the window. Already in a bad mood, Alco's mood plummeted the longer she looked at Sojurou. The subtlety of her expression, however, was lost on him.
いや、これから駅前で水泳部の部長と待ち合わせなんだけど、そのことでお礼を言っておきたくて。
No thanks. I was just on my way to the station to meet the swimming club captain and wanted to say thanks. Hmm? Well, that was unexpected. Thanks. Joining a club. Alka had a hunch that he was about to say something brainless.
ふーん。お礼ってお礼参りってこと？
And by thanks, you mean payback, right?
Hmm?
What? Fortunately, Sojurou was so completely unaware of the more sinister implications of the word payback.
よくわからないけど、そんな大したことじゃないよ。
I don't know what you mean by that, but it's no big deal.
ただ、水泳部は夏までそう忙しくないって話だったから。
It's just that the swimming club captain said that the club doesn't really get that busy until summer. Sojurou was just about to thank her for recommending a club that would not take up much of his time, but Naoko cut him off with an expression of disinterest.
当然でしょ。幽霊部員になりそうな生徒なんて紹介できないから。忙しいあなたでも務まりそうな場所があったから口に出しただけよ。
Well, duh. I couldn't very well introduce you to a club that I knew you would never turn up to. All I did was mention some that even someone as busy as you could join.
なるほど、無駄がないね。
Yeah, I see. Very efficient. His open admiration for her sapped Alco's will to fight. Finding a suitable club and negotiating with its captain hadn't been an efficient use of her time at all.
とにかくお世話になったから、それで礼を言っときたくて。
Anyway, you really helped me out. I just wanted to say thanks. Sojurou gratefully dipped his head, but not before the flustered Alco stopped him.
よしてよ。今あなたにそんなことされても迷惑だから。
Give me a break. You're just gonna give me a headache if you do that.
それで、水泳部はどう？やっていけそう？
So how's the club? Does it seem like a good fit? An awkwardness infiltrated her previously sharp gaze. Sojurou was able to pick up the odd change in her behavior, but couldn't divine its reason. So he simply started with what he knew so far and reported the most recent information he had.
ああ、水泳部はクビになった。
Oh, I got kicked out of the club already.
ね、
What? Why? Alco instinctively shouted at the unexpected response. Like a human jack-in-the-box. This unexpected development threw her mind into tizzy, and she momentarily forgot the complicated feelings she'd been wrestling with.
だって今から待ち合わせだって。
But you literally just said you were on your way to meet the captain.
それはこれからヤシロギの温水プールに連れて行ってくれるからだよ。
Yeah, the captain's taking me to an onsen in Yashirogi. Sojurou stated this very matter-of-factly to the still reeling Alco.
話がつながらない。そこまでうまくいってるのに、どうして入部を拒否されるのよ、あんたは。
I don't understand. Things seem to be going fine. Why are they kicking you out?
そりゃ俺が泳げないからだろ。
Oh, yeah, it's because I can't swim. Alco reached up with her fingers and pinched the bridge of her nose as she processed his answer.
しずきくん、昨日の私の質問は覚えてる？走るのか泳ぐのか、どっちがいいかってやつ。
Zuki, do you remember my question from yesterday? The one where I asked whether you preferred running or swimming?
私の記憶は正しいけど、一応確認しておくわね。
I'm confident I remember your answer, but please repeat it for me.
あなた、確かに泳ぐ方だって言ったけど。
You said you preferred swimming, right?
ああ、昔から泳げないのはなんとか克服したかったんだ。反対に走る方は得意だけど。
That's something that I might say. Yeah, since I was little, I've always wanted to learn, and I'm already really good at running, so. Her energy spent, Alco finally understood.
俺が1年なら1から鍛えてくれたらしいんだけど。
Yeah, apparently they would have taken me in and trained me from square one if I was in my first year.
あと3ヶ月で3年になる身分なのに、金槌の部員は雇えないそうだ。
Sadly, it sounds like they can't recruit a second year like me who sings like a rock, especially with only 3 months left in the school year.
けど部長が親身になってくれて、これから泳ぎを教えてくれることになったんだよ。
But the captain was super nice about it, even offered to teach me how to swim. Sojurou's words were spoken from a place of joy, a fact that failed to reach Alco.
はあ、つまり、欠陥品を売りつけたってわけか。こりゃ水泳部の部長に合わす顔がないと。ちょっと待った。
Oh. So in other words, I tried to palm off defective goods. Never be able to show my face to the swimming club captain again. Wait a minute. Isn't the captain a...
しずきくん、水泳部の部長って。
Suzuki, the swimming club captain is... She stopped herself short of a girl. Yeah, I knew it. She was afraid of how that might look, as she might not be able to rein herself in if she started.
もういいわ。気持ちは分かったから、どこか遠くにいてくれない？少し疲れてて、とてもじゃないけどあなたの相手はしていられないの。
You know what? It doesn't matter. I understand now, so you can just go far, far from here, okay? I can't just deal with you right now.
飛び丸もそんなことを言ってたな。青崎は昨日と今日、珍しく疲れてるって。何かあったのか？
You know, it's weird. Tobimaru said the same thing. He said you were weirdly tired yesterday and today. Did something happen?
ちょっとね。でもいいの。解決したみたいだから。
Kind of, but it's fine. Seems to have resolved itself.
それより、しずきくんはどう見える？私、そんなに疲れて見えるのかな？
Anyway, how do I look to you, Suzuki? Do I really look that exhausted? Why did she ask him this? Blurting out things for no reason on impulse. That was not usual for Alco. Maybe it was because she realized that this would be their last chance to have a normal conversation. After a few moments of contemplation, Sojurou conjured up a grin that cut straight through the tension.
そうだな。疲れているというより、生き生きしているように見える。仕方なく畑を耕していた狼が、久しぶりに狩りに出ることになって、機嫌を上げている感じだ。
Well, I would say you look more lively than you're tired. Like a wolf that's been forced to plow fields for a long time, but is excited to finally go on a hunt again. He seemed so cheerful. Like he was so happy for her. Without thinking, Aoko's hands went to her cheeks. If what he said were true, then she was grinning from ear to ear. There was just no way she would have made such a mistake.
とにかくありがとう。じゃあ、また明日。
Anyway, thanks again. See you tomorrow. Perhaps still not comfortable enough to wave to her, he said his goodbye with sincerity in his voice and a smile and took his leave.
待って。こんな話があるの。聞いてから言って。
Wait. I have a question for you, then you may leave. Aoko called out after him. Her voice was cold as she admonished herself for having been somewhat affable earlier. Yeah?
意味のない例え話よ。
This is just a hypothetical question.
そうね。あなたが空腹で死にそうな時、目の前に同じように空腹で死にそうな2匹の動物がいるとするわ。
Let's say you're on the brink of starvation, and right in front of you are two animals, also starving.
しずきくんに銃をあげる。それでどちらかの動物を撃って。右はライオンで、左は子猫。選ぶのはあなたの自由だから。
Someone gives you a gun and tells you to shoot one of them. The one on the right is a lion, the one on the left is a kitten. What do you do? I shoot myself. For them. It was a fable-like moral dilemma, especially in the way in which it was cruel and rather preachy. The kind that if you thought too hard about, you would never find an answer. Sojurou answered quickly and calmly.
いや、撃たないと思うよ。だって、自分の好きにしていいんだろ。それにほら、空腹ならお互い様だ。
I don't think I'd shoot at all. You asked me what I do, right? And, come on, all three of us are starving. He was not in the least fazed by the dilemma. He gave the most innocent response. So innocent, in fact, that it would give anyone pause.
長生きするわ、あなた。
You're gonna live a long life, Suzuki.
すごいセリフだな。そんなことを言われたのは、多分君が初めてだ。
Whoa, you think so? I think that's the first time anyone's ever said that to me. Adorning his face was a smile wholly out of sync with his comment.
何よそれ。
What the heck is that supposed to mean? She regretted stopping him. If only she'd just watched him go, this conversation would have never happened. Sojurou Suzuki made his way down the sloped street. Today, just like every day, he probably had to work late again. Only Aoko and Alice remained, with Alice doing what she could simply to blend in.
つくづくこっちのペースを乱してくれるわね。あの人畜無害の田舎者は。
An harmless hick really throws me for a loop. Aoko clenched her right fist tightly as she cursed out loud, anything to prevent herself from screaming at the top of her lungs. Whether that scream would be directed towards Sojurou or towards herself was another matter entirely.
あおこ。
Aoko? Aoko heard Alice's soft voice behind her. Aoko knew that she was going to say, she had known for the entire time. Ever since Alice, having shown no reaction to any of the other students, changed her expression on seeing Sojurou.
言わなくてもいい。あいつでしょ、目撃者は。
You don't need to say it. It's him, right? The witness. Her voice was cold as ice. It was the voice of someone talking about a complete stranger. A lion and the kitten. There were pros and cons to choosing either of these animals. The point being that she asked him to choose one of them. In terms of risk, the lion was the most dangerous choice. The instant the gun was pointed at it, there was a chance it would fight back. Those who chose the lion required more courage, but any sense of guilt that came with holding a gun would be forgotten. Lions were fierce creatures, a poor excuse to shoot an animal, perhaps, but one that certainly helped alleviate the guilt. But what about the kitten, the weaker creature? It goes without saying that the kitten would be the easier target of the two, but choosing it would be a disquieting decision for anyone. Even if the kitten had no chance to survive, it was still too senseless to carry out. And to Aoko, Sojurou was that choice.
てっきり私もそうだと思ってた。
I knew it was him too. When she had felt that sinking feeling of the student council room, she ignored it. There was no getting around what must be done, she told herself. Until, that is, Sojurou went and said what he did, causing her resolve to waver. But the discomfort in her chest did not stem from any guilt she may have felt. She could care less for Sojurou. He was weak and would be incredibly easy to deal with. Yet, for some reason, she could not dispel her reservations. A transfer student who moved into the city from the middle of nowhere, with no family to speak of. Few would notice if he were to suddenly disappear, compared to a person of some renown. If she were to kill him, it would be simple as wringing a cat's neck. And all it served to just piss her off. It was too lucky, like everything was neatly handed to her. She wanted to just drop kick it right into orbit.
信じられない。私嫌がってる。これは違う。
Can't believe it. I hate it. This isn't how it's supposed to be.
こんなの私じゃない。
Why am I like this? Standing behind her, Alice heard all of the muttering. Nevertheless, she seemed to ignore it and said,
彼、首に布を巻いていたわね。
Did you notice he has something wrapped around his neck? A wholly unrelated topic. Alko returned to her senses. His neck?
ええ。水泳部の首とかけていたのかしら。
Yeah. I wonder if it had something to do with being rejected by the swimming club. Alice had put some thought into this, as if it had a deeper meaning to her somehow.
そういえば、あいつ初めて会った時も首に布巻いてたっけ？襟を行儀よく締めてるから目立たないけど。
Now that you mention it, I saw him wearing the same thing the first time we met. Must have missed it because he always has his collar up. The conversation turned into idle nonsense. And though it solved none of her current problems, it did help calm Aoko's frazzled nerves.
サンキュー。落ち着いたわ、アリス。
Thanks, Alice. I'm good.
それと、気合も入った。
I'm ready to go.
善は急げ。あいつが言いふらす前に決着をつけよう。
Let's strike while the iron's hot and end this before he spreads any rumors. Pumped once more, Alko turned her back to the school gate. For now, they would retire to the mansion and prepare for battle. I want to hold out just a little bit longer to see if at the end of this there's a...
いつ、どこで彼を殺すの？
Sure, but when and where do you plan to kill him? She said quietly so as not to be overheard by anyone else. Normally, Yonka had to rein in that side of Alice, out in the open as they were, but this was far from a normal situation.
今日の夜、場所はとっておきの夢の国よ。
Tonight, as for the place, we shall meet him in the land of dreams. She gave a fearless laugh. A strangely pleasant sound, like the kind one would make when meeting their lover. Yes! All right. A good time to split. Sojurou's not doing great. Although I do wonder what's up with the. Hopefully they're gonna talk about the bandages now. Although, as much as I want to ruminate on all that, it is ever so dreadfully late. So I'm gonna turn in for tonight. But hope you guys have a lovely rest of your week, rest of your day. Hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, and yeah, be good to each other. And I'll see you later. Bye bye now.